Welcome, everybody, back to another Microsoft Unboxed podcast. This is episode 29. I am your host today, Kareem Anderson, and I'm joined by
David Allen. We're almost to the big 30.
Yeah, that means I don't know what's the big 30 marker. I forget. It's been so long since I've been 30. What do you look
What
forward to?
isn't me too? Isn't 30 the new isn't 30 the new 20 because 40 is the new 30?
Yeah, but then we're going backwards, and now we can't drink again. I'm not looking forward to that, right?
I
We're
guess we'll
looking
just
forward
have
to
to
stuff.
sneak one in, I guess, buddy.
I'm I think I was late in development when it came to working. So I think at 30, I was looking at like cashing money into my 401k that it had been newly developed. So that what I was looking for. 401ks and health insurance. I was very happy with.
Yep, those are very important in life, just like our technology here.
Yeah. So if you're turning 30, you can look forward to that. You can look forward to random aches and pains, not being able to handle your alcohol as nearly as well as you did in your 20s. And I mean, if you're fortunate enough in this economy, starting to look at housing. I hear the feds are about to drop rates, so it could be a
Yeah, I
month.
heard that right before the pod here. I'm gonna throw one more fun one in there. I had a little accident yesterday, and didn't get a chance to tell you off camera. I had a little accident yesterday, and let me be the first to tell you, folks. When you get to your 40s, that accident feels different in your 40s than it did in your 20s. Let me just make it look.
Well,
You tend to
especially
take a
when you,
little. You tend to take a little more Advil on day 2 than you did when you were
yeah.
20.
Well, and I also realized at that age too that I had to do a lot more explaining to the doctors what the accident was. When you're younger, it's like, hey, I fell, and because the injuries, were super minor or I could recover pretty easily, the doctors are like, whatever, here's some, Advil, here, ibuprofen, go home, drink some water, get out of my face. Now, when I fall, it's like, okay, sir, you're much older. That could be dangerous. How and why did you fall? And I'm like, really? We got to get into this.
Do they really have to know?
I mean, because you're getting older, yeah. I mean, it depends on what you could. I mean, again, when you're younger, it doesn't matter what you break. You're going to heal. Now, when you get older, some of that healing may or may not happen, may not occur. And I got to
Well,
know why.
I'm going to give my father credit here. He is 70 years old, and there's one thing that he always told. I have a younger brother and a younger sister, for those that want to know. And one thing he always told us 3 kids, and still does to this day, son, the ground will always catch you. Well, yesterday the ground the ground caught me, and that point of advice is very true.
How was that embraced? Because the way he said it sounded lovingly, but I feel like it was more like gravity always wins.
Gravity won in this case, and it was not friendly.
Fair enough. Uh, Enough of the old man podcast. Let's get back into Microsoft's news. That's what you guys came for, and that's what we're here to deliver. We have some news this week. We're going to go through the headlines real quick. We're going to be talking about pre-orders for the Xbox Series, the new Xbox Series X, S, and X consoles, the ones we had mentioned way back in the day. I think it was March-ish about these updates coming. They're basically the same outer casings, but with some new specs-ish, kind of. We're going to be talking about Microsoft unifying Teams app finally. We'll talk about why they split it to begin with, and what their reasoning was back in the day. We'll also be talking about Microsoft Loop getting its 2.0 update. For those of you who may or may not have it, it's supposed to look new and nice. This reminds me similar of the OneDrive. So for those of you excited to get it, just hold your horses. We're also talking about Microsoft retesting recall. They've remembered that recall is a thing, and they're ready to kind of bring it back. We're talking about Google wanting to make access to their apps on Windows a lot easier, because I'm guessing Chrome OS isn't taking off like they thought it would be. That's just my own personal bias. We're going to be talking about Google also facing a renewed U.S. legal challenge over its Chrome data privacy practices. So, in addition to antitrust for search, looks like they could be having some issues with the browser. Welcome to, again, Microsoft circa 2000 and when was the case? 2002, 2001?
2002, 2003, I think.
Something like that. Welcome back. And then we're gonna be finally wrapping up with Twitch raising its mobile subscription prices because gameflation. I don't know why, but we'll get into it. With that being said, get us into our first headline, please.
Well, let's jump on in there and have a little gaming fun here since we're doing this on a Friday. And hopefully, most of you are listening on a Friday or the weekend. And we talked about this back in June, but I thought it would be good to update. You can pre order the quote new Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X as of yesterday. Now, just a quick reminder, we'll keep this brief. You have the Xbox Series X is now a 2 terabyte special design with memories of the Xbox Pass being put in that design. So that's pretty neat. That's an extra $100 for that one though. So keep in mind that one's going to be $599. And there's also a pearl white model with a 2 terabyte disk drive. That one is still the standard $499. And our Xbox Series S is getting a 1 terabyte model, and it is $299. And all of these are in pearl white, except for the special edition. That one is still black. It's best way to describe it is just like memories of Xbox and little cues to the Xbox Pass are included in the design. So no hardware upgrades this time except for the storage updates. Microsoft still says we've got some things to look forward to the end of the year. So are we looking at an Xbox upgrade? Are we looking at a new form factor? Hint, hint, handheld, please. Thank you. So we will have to see where Microsoft takes us. For now, we just got putting a little spice in it. And I'll throw one more thing in. There's also another way now that you can access your Xbox cloud gaming services through an Amazon 4K Fire TV stick. You can get that bundle over on Amazon.com. That bundle will run you, I looked this morning before the pod, it is $82.99. That gets you a controller and a 4K Fire Stick. So if you're looking an inexpensive way, and maybe these new Xboxes are a little bit out of your price range, the Amazon Fire Stick is a good way to jump in the ecosystem or add to a game room, a bedroom, a playroom, or whatever, just to have some access.
I mean, this is what a difference almost 10 years makes, because that Xbox Series X in white is, I believe, Microsoft's dream of the Xbox One when it first announced. It is a discless console, and now people aren't even batting an eye at the idea, the concept of that. Remember, it was torches and people got fired for the idea of something so asinine as, oh, how am I not going to use an optical drive to play my games? And here we are introducing another version of an Xbox that doesn't have an optical drive, and people are just kind of like, all right. Now it could be, for those of you out there who are probably yelling at your microphones into your headsets, yeah, people aren't as interested in the Xbox. So Microsoft, doesn't matter what Microsoft produces, but the idea that they can push this out and be like, you know what, we're going to keep chipping away at that idea of everything being in the cloud or everything streaming, and that we can start, it doesn't seem like they're saving any cost for this, but at least removing the optical drives from these things, another point of breakdown for some of these consoles or whatnot, things like that. To where we get to a point where we have the accessibility of playing a game on a Fire Stick. Like, you can play a whole library of games on a Fire Stick now with a game controller. Who knows, what another 10 years will be, and if we'll even have the Xbox console as we kind of perceive it now. Maybe, like you said, we move on to the handhelds. I'm just saying, it's funny to see these consoles come out with as much power as they have and graphics performance and not have that optical drive. But when Microsoft dared introduce that 10 years ago, everyone was like, they need to exit the gaming market. Just funny.
Well, I think, and this is something we've discussed in episodes past, I'm going to have to give Elon, our Twitter CEO, and head, I'm going to have to give him a little credit here, because I think the reason people didn't want it in the past was lack of broadband access, and Starlink has really come on strong here in the last couple of years. In fact, I've even seen some of my neighbors pick it up, and I've even ordered one myself to have as a backup. And after seeing what theirs is, and Starlink is very Xbox gaming friendly. I'm gonna have to give credit what credit's due here. He's done a fine job very quickly over the past 2 years of making that service widely available. And if you don't have other broadband options, it's affordable for someone who may not have other choices. So maybe this is the time for Xbox to jump in there and say, let's give that all digital way a try and see how people respond to it. I mean, if need be, I'm sure they could put the disk drives back in there and just not sell the all digital.
Mm-hmm. Well, you heard that here, ladies and gentlemen. This marks, what is this, a Friday that we get our co-host David, who has been Elon pilled. So you hear that, Elon? If you want to advertise Starlink on this podcast, please do so, because you got a warm embrace.
Yeah, we need a little help paying bills here at Microsoft Unboxed. Elon, if you want to jump in and help us, we don't mind.
We can't pay with the cloud. Moving on to our next story. We got Microsoft doing what Microsoft does. They are taking something where they have multiple apps and trying to make it one app. When they could have just started off with one app to begin with. Microsoft is unifying its Teams app. For those of you who use Teams and not in the begrudging way, actually 80% of you probably do. Microsoft introduced Microsoft Teams Personal, I don't know, a little over 2 years ago, maybe even longer than that. And so people had to essentially, if you're a user of Teams, separately log in and out of Teams for work and Teams for personal. And they were also aggravatingly separate in where you downloaded them and how they kind of showed up on the desktop. So I believe it was it start of Windows 11 or was it back in Windows 10? It might have been start of Windows 11 where they were saying, you know what, we're going to send Skype on that old dusty trail up the road, and we're going to replace it with Teams. Teams is going to be your new way to have friends to communicate. And so they started putting it in the taskbar, and it became sort of the way you were going to use it. Now, unfortunately, those of us who had built up a works communication apparatus through Teams, because Teams for Work was the first one out, so you kind of gave it to all your friends because that's what you needed and that's what you had. They then said, all right, well, here's the personal one, but it didn't carry any of the stuff over from work. You had to basically reset up that entire thing. And you had to navigate two separate apps because Microsoft is Microsoft. Now they've streamlined it in the experience by combining the work and single one into a single app. So you can basically toggle between which account you would like to use. And thusly, you can toggle between the relationships and communications in the chat section of Teams. So, fortunately, Dave and I are friends and we are coworkers. So it really didn't affect us that much. But I know for people who maybe have family members or friends on WhatsApp, Skype, Messenger, things like that, and then they have Slack, and then they have their work friends on Teams. If you want to try and do the heavy lifting of moving everyone over to Teams, you'll at least be able to have the one app. So you won't have to necessarily open up WhatsApp and kind of jump between both and share files and things like that through two separate apps. You'll be able to just use Teams and then toggle between, hey, I'm talking to my work people about this thing. I'm talking to my friends group about this. Very similar to how Slack kind of does it now. I can't believe it took Microsoft this long, but it's there. They had a couple of new things as well that are coming along with the unification, which is you'll be able to create communities. You can easily establish and dedicate a workspace for the group to collaborate, share, update, meet together, kind of engage things, which is kind of fun. I think Slack has something very similar to this. It's you just put all your stuff in that one area for everyone to kind of go through and use. You can also add and change community avatars. You can add and change the community name, and you can add visibility settings controls so that you control who accesses the community with specific visibility. So if you have that one friend who likes to share information outside of the chat, and you're like, dude, you need to keep quiet. What stays in the chat stays in the chat stays in the chat. you can assign him limited visibility to the rest of the chat. So, and then you also have a requirement for approval to join. So maybe you just kick him out of the group altogether, and he has the request to come back in. You can give him certain times that he can join the chat, and then kick him back out again. With that being said, what are your thoughts on these new improvements and this unification?
Finally, I think I remember back in the day we had MSN Messenger. I'm sure you remember that. Then that became Windows Live, and we had this app called Trello or something like that.
Trello.
That would supposedly combine them all. Then we had the arguments of you can't sign into mine, I can't sign into yours. So Microsoft kind of came out with Skype, which was good. Skype was first, and then we had Teams, and like you said, we had a kind of a diverged ecosystem. And then earlier this year and the end of last year, we thought Skype was going away. Well, we posted something last week that now Skype is your friend and now is ad-free across the platform. So, Microsoft said, well, let's do Teams Personal, which was obviously a laughter for most people. I laughed at it. And now we have finally decided, after many years and many iterations, to combine the two. Now, I will say mine has been combined for a little while because we're in the beta release channels and whatnot. That's interesting. The way mine actually works is, I see it, but it could be done better, I think. When you launch Windows and you launch Teams, it launches both Teams Personal and Teams for your business / your school. And then up at the top, under your name, you can switch the account. So what it does is make that account primary, but still leaves your Teams Personal. That's what I'm going to call it. It leaves a Teams Personal down there. So for me, I do have to jump down there and close Teams Personal because, as Kareem said, he and I are friends, so we try to keep our conversations all in one place, so we're not running back and forth between apps. So if you're doing this at work and your employer allows it, it could be a little tricky trying to keep track. Let me give you a little piece of friendly advice from Advice for David on a Friday. Watch what you type in which window, folks. You don't want the people at work knowing your personal business, or the people at home knowing your work business, or your personal business at work. So
Yes,
just be smart there.
I agree. So we will leave you with this. It is Teams unified with an asterisk because, to your point, it pops out separate instances of chats. So you're not within just the one app and toggling between the interfaces. You're getting two separate things once it's engaged. So hopefully this is the start. Obviously, everything could always use improvement. Maybe they allow theming for the different messaging
That would be
identificators. So to your point, maybe we don't confuse our typical black and purple teams, which is work related, with maybe the white and purple version for our friends when we're engaging in those types of conversations, and we can switch back and forth. I know it's a lot of code, a lot of resources being used to do that, but it could save you from getting fired at work or ruining friendships and relationships in the process. We're going to move on to our next topic, which is Loop. Microsoft Loop is still around, and it's been updated.
My friend, Microsoft Loop is still around, and I'm glad to see that Microsoft is updating the platform. This was one of those platforms when it first came out. Kareem and I both were working for another outlet, and we started putting our podcast notes in Loop there for a while. But we kind of got worried there after a while that we didn't see a whole lot of improvement to Loop. We didn't see a whole lot of changes. So was this something that Microsoft was trying, something they might do away with? But over the last few months, they have really kicked the Loop updates into gear. So without further ado, we have a couple more updates today. One of the a little crazy. They have changed the Loop address to loop.cloud.microsoft. So if you're looking for Loop, keep that in mind. They have also added a nice sidebar to where you can access your meeting notes at any point in time. They have also added where you can create workspaces. It follows you from page to page, whereas creating a workspace used to be just on the main page. And here lately, I will throw this out there, one I have noticed is they have allowed the ability to bring snippets of loop. I forget what's the name of those. It was on the tip of my tongue. Components, loop components. You can now bring loop components over to OneNote, so that's a good thing. They're calling this Loop 2.0. I'm not quite sure that we're at the total of 2.0, but hey, I guess we'll have to look forward to maybe what Loop 3.0 might be. I think the possibilities for Loop are endless. I'm just hoping that Microsoft stays on top of it. Now, remember, Loop is just for information, for keeping your stuff organized. We don't have pen support yet in Loop. Don't know that we're getting it. The pen support and stuff like that is still in the OneNote. So that is one of your major differences between OneNote and Loop. Hope Microsoft stays on top of this. I would love to come to a day where Loop and OneNote become one cohesive app. I don't know that that's the plan, but I would love to see that. That right now, Loop is a direct competitor to Notion. So for you Notion users out there, you can jump over and give Loop a try and decide which one you like best.
Yeah, I'm going to push back and say that I would like Loop and OneNote to stay separate, but I would also like Microsoft to acknowledge it. Unlike,
yes,
it feels like this is sort of a Games of Thrones kind of thing. Like this is the bastard productivity app that Microsoft doesn't really want to acknowledge. But I think what they need to do is bundle it into Office 365's cavalcade of apps. So you got your, maybe it takes the spot of Publisher. I know people use Publisher, but let's be honest. When we list the apps that we use in the office and day to day, it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, not Publisher, OneNote, and maybe you put in Loop, but Loop needs to have a presence in that affiliation, because right now you have to separately go out. I think it was a web app for the longest time. I think you can, on Windows, you can actually go and download it from the Microsoft Store as an app itself. And I think it used to be locked into only enterprise. I think you can do personal now as well.
Yeah, personal is free. Correct. And when I used it yesterday, it was still just a web interface. So I have not checked the Microsoft Store to see if there's a Loop.
It might be a web app in the Microsoft Store, but it's something it's a destination you can go to get it. So I think when you load up Office on your desktop, I think you should be able to have this component also be loaded as well and accessible, so people know they associate Loop with Office and this is what they do. And the reason why I say keep it separate is because Loop is more, while it's a direct competitor to Notion, Notion does a combination of things, which is basically it's a task manager as well as a OneNote replacement. I think if you're going to be Microsoft and already own this space of OneNote, it's already there. It's a free form kind of app. Loop is more of for people who use it, Monday, Rike, these other forms of task managers that people use to, coalesce information, data, dates, times, deliverables for the most part. That's a big thing that, OneNote doesn't necessarily track. You could force it in there, but mostly this is like to hold companies accountable for things or employees accountable for being on time, delivering the assets that they need, or the times, or the completion things in here. That's what Loop is assigned to. That's what its main core thing is. To combine the two, you could get a Notion thing, but I feel like OneNote already does the core brainstorming aspect of this, drawing, writing, all that stuff. I think the way that Microsoft is going about doing the components, as you said, the Loop components, is the best way to go. So we should be able to take over or bring over. So if you're, say you are the design creative on a marketing campaign, or some business or whatever, where they need design aspects and design language, that you can bring over your drawings in OneNote, your sketches or whatever, your high profile, high-minded concepts that were in OneNote. bring it over to the loop component into loop and say, hey, I will have this delivered, and you put a little check mark or whatever by the 27th or whatever. And that's when your manager will check back in loop to be like, he delivered that. And vice versa. Like, if there are schedules that you need to pull separately, like you don't want to keep going to loop, you just want to pull it out and put it where you're constantly going to be looking at it. Like if you're in Excel and you're managing the P&Ls of certain things, you can pull that from loop and put it in Excel, and then you can reference it there. But that's where I think loop will work best, is if people can say, hey, I don't need to necessarily go to this third party anymore to do task management and pay for a subscription for it and pay for storage for it, because again, a lot of these places are like you can only store up to so much files and content in it before they start saying like, all right, now you got to start buying our cloud subscription. If you're already using Microsoft Office, now you can be like, we've added loop, and you can direct anybody, again, third-party contractors, people outside the company, to be like, hey, we're using loop, so if you want us to work with you and deliver your deliverables or keep us on task or keep us managing this project until set time, we're using loop. So go there. That's what I think will work best for them.
One thing about loop, and I'll end on this note, being web-based, it does work on all platforms. That is something to keep in mind. There is a little bit of confusion sometimes with the OneNote platform, because there's still this version of OneNote called OneNote for Windows 10. Yeah. And then there's OneNote. Even I have gotten confused helping people with that in the past myself. So I will say this, that's one of my winners for loops. I bought a new Pixel tablet last week, the one with the dock, just to check it out. I needed a smart speaker in a room, and I needed access to some video content. So I picked up one of those tablets, and I opened up Loop last night just to scan through some notes. And, it was nice that I didn't have to worry with the Android app. I didn't have to worry, would it configure, would it sync, for OneNote. I could open up Loop and everything was there. I modified what I needed. I closed the window. I went to bed. It was over, so that's that's a positive for Loop. But I think you bring up a lot of good points there, that they both have different purposes. And I think Microsoft needs to step up and to differentiate what that purpose is and how to include that in 365.
Agreed. And last note, it's rolling out. So if you don't see it immediately, we're not liars. This is one of those cases where it's like OneDrive, where, who knows, maybe 4 months from now, one of us will get the new version of this, new design, but it is currently rolling out. So don't fret. The next topic we're talking about is Microsoft remembering that recall was a thing. For those of you who don't remember that, we're going to kind of give you a brief history on recall. Recall was Microsoft's flagship feature for all of these Copilot Plus PCs. It was supposed to be this AI enhanced search function that was going to happen in Windows, which basically recorded everything you did and then recalled it for you in via thumbnails and screenshots. So if you were to, and again, this is search on steroids. If you were looking for, trying to remember something you did, you can simply type into recall a brief prompt saying, hey, I was thinking about, 2 weeks ago, I saw a recipe for banana nut bread that I wanted to make. You just type in banana nut bread, and what recall would do is pull up every instance of that reference, images, web searches, anything related to banana nut, and present it to you in a thumbnail form that you can then scan through and be like, oh, that's exactly it. Via app, via on your desktop, via on the web, maybe even in a movie that you captured a screenshot from. So that was the promise. The reality was it was a security nightmare that Microsoft presumably should have known about. So about the weekend before all of these Copilot Plus PCs came out, Microsoft yanked it because cyber security officials and those in the know were saying, hey, you're storing all this data in plain text. You're opting everyone into it automatically if people don't necessarily want that, give them the option to do it. And there are other things that you could do to protect it. And so all of these Copilot Plus PCs ran without recall, which is, again, the highlighted feature for Copilot, for AI, for these NPUs that everyone invested in. Fortunately, the Copilot Plus PCs stood on their own because they had amazing battery life. They didn't need this recall feature necessarily, but Microsoft said, you know what, we hear you. We know that you guys are concerned, so we're going to go back into the lab. And they never gave us a date when they'd come back out of the lab with this thing. They just said, hey, maybe in the future we'll relaunch it. Well, we have a time frame. It looks like Microsoft is going to be testing this coming up in what is this, October, I believe. They are going to allow those of us who went out and bought Copilot Plus PCs or got them as review units or are testing it currently. They're going to let you enroll into the Insider program and start testing this again in October. So the way it's going to set up now, or I guess the way Microsoft's going to reintroduce it, is they're going to have it as an opt-in setup that you do at the start of your Windows install. So as soon as you open up your brand new PC or whatnot, or you update it to whatever version that it needs to, the inbox experience will say, hey, would you like to, you know, as you put in your account and sign in and pick whether or not this is going to be used for gaming, education, all that other stuff you do at the beginning of every Windows setup. It will now have a new prompt saying, would you like to enroll in recall? Yes or no? And again, if you decide to later on, you'll be able to, but initially you can at least say yes or no. It's supposed to have enhanced security, so they're beefing up the Indian encryption that they mentioned before. I'm assuming they're doing something with that the open text file that people were able to access. They're also going to be doing a little bit more to secure data privacy. Again, they already mentioned that they're going to be storing it locally using Indian encryption, but they're also going to be tying a lot of this access to Windows Hello bioauthentication. So fingerprints and face recognition will be the only way that you can even start up the instances of recall. So again, if you are on your computer, recall is enabled and using. When you leave your computer, recall basically stops. And in order for anybody to, you know, access your computer, they'll need your thumbprint or your facial recognition, and they'll have to opt back into recall, restarting again. Microsoft had also mentioned there are going to be other filters that people can manually use, which are basically don't record when I use these websites or this browser or these apps in particular. So you can kind of filter that. You can also pause when recall is running. So if you're saying like, hey, I'm going to be doing something that I don't want recall to look at for the next 30 minutes, you can turn it off and then turn it back on. And I believe there are going to be more, but we will be seeing people kind of, again, test this in, I want to say, yeah, is it October or is it September?
October 15th, I think.
There we go. And what are your thoughts on this? Revisiting recall, or should they have just let it go?
Let it go. I'm not sure people even want it. I've seen several content creators and competitors take shots at it. Well, just if you don't want Microsoft taking pictures of yourself every 3 minutes, just switch to Linux, switch to Mac. You know, I have seen some of Microsoft's competitors use this time where, you know, recall kind of flopped here out the get-go to use it to, you know, go against what Microsoft is doing here. We've had our Copilot PCs for a little while, and I think we can both agree that we've enjoyed our Copilot PCs quite a bit. And we're seeing that, you know, the battery life, the performance, the features, they're there. Is recall needed? I don't think so. I've got a feeling that people just won't use it. Kind of like, I hate to say, kind of like Copilot. The general public just isn't catching on to all of these features as much as they are efficient, powerful, functional, feature-rich PCs. I saw a posting for Snapdragon in the last week after the pod or earlier this week that, you know, they were very excited about the demand they're seeing for these Snapdragon PCs. There was one model in particular, I cannot remember which one, forgive me, that was actually sold out, you know, where they're waiting for more units. I just don't think these software features, other than Copilot itself, but these little extra software features are needed. Sure, the camera stuff is nice. The studio effects and that stuff is nice, but recall, the finish, the drawing stuff, I just don't know that people want to play with that.
I think you're right. There's definitely an instance of that. I'm going to push back on that as well. I was saying, The competitors are doing this. They're doing it differently. And I think this is where the testing period for recall kind of comes in. I wrote in my piece at the very end that maybe Microsoft keeps recall. Again, it's opt-in, so you don't have to necessarily use it at all. But they kind of poach from their competitors. Now, you're absolutely correct. Everyone kind of took their chances to kick Microsoft while they were down. And Microsoft doesn't need to get up swinging. They need to get up and think like, all right, Google, it just offered, what was it, screenshots or snapshots in the new Pixel, as part of the new Pixel feature, where basically snapshots where you manually take them, but it organizes it through AI for you. It puts it in a separate section. It doesn't just go into downloads amongst all your other images and content that you have to then manually, filter, sort, tag, and things like that. Because there are plenty of times where I go on my phone, want to send a screenshot to my wife about something, and then I have to sort through the pictures we took of our kids earlier that day, other screenshots I've sent to my friends, and maybe through search I can kind of bring it up if I type it in real quick. But this screenshot thing, snapshots, you can go to the special snapshot section, which will separate the video and photos you've taken of your family, friends, stuff like that, and other content you've downloaded from other places, and just go straight to the screenshots, and then you can start sorting from that. I believe that is what recall could be. Maybe
I'll agree with that.
Maybe there's versions of recall where it just constantly is running, or you can manually engage in recall through certain periods of time, and then go to that section of recall and be like, all right, whenever I'm doing work from 8 to 5, I want recall on because I'm only doing work. That's the only thing on my screen. And when I close it out, or maybe you're not doing work. Maybe we always say work because we're in the US and that's all we think about. Maybe you're just casually shopping. Maybe you're a grandmother and you're like, you know what? My kids are about to, or my grandkids are about to have their birthday. I'm gonna be shopping for the next 2 hours. But you don't want to remember every website you went to, because one website might launch you to another website that might launch you to somewhere, and you forget where you started at. Now you have 15 tabs open, and you're like, well, I just want to go back to the one that the thing I was looking at initially, where I was on Pinterest. I was looking for crocheted cactuses because my kid loves them, or my grandkid loves them. Now you can use recall for that specific instance. For that 2 hours that you were shopping, now you can go back to that original one, that original website you started with, and purchase from there. You can do actions upon that, because in recall, they're not just thumbnails. You can actively re-engage with whatever content there was. So I'm saying recall needs to come back. It also needs to be opt-in. So people who are complaining about privacy and security, give them the option to be like, hey, I'm indulging in this. Take the feedback, because again, I believe Apple's also doing a similar thing with iOS intelligence, where they're going to allow you to manually do screenshots. So Microsoft has the foundation there. They just need to tweak it a lot better, present it a little differently, and they could be right there with the competitor. I'm not saying they're going to be better. They can be, but they can at least be there when people are like, hey, how come Windows doesn't have this? Versus what Microsoft normally does, which I believe you kind of were alluding to, where they scud away from it and be like, we're out of this. We got burned by it. The stove was hot. Let's get out of the kitchen. And then while everyone else is in there cooking, they're going to be like, where's Microsoft then? I'm like, oh, well, we had it, but we got rid of it because you guys thought you didn't like it. Versus saying, no, we're going to stick to it and make it better and not just quit. So that's my opinion on it.
I think you bring up some very good points there. I was, in our rush to post things on social media in today's world, not just, us as tech journalists, just people in general. We're all posting the memes, the screenshots, the sayings and stuff like that. And we're, copying those and we're saving those. And, I imagine most people, you open up their photos on their phone, there's probably 100, maybe even more than 100 screenshots in there that they're just posting, having fun with. So to your point, if recall was used just to organize what we ask it to organize, that would be very helpful. I would use something like that. I would prefer something like that. But I do have one question for you, my friend. In your discussion, I just need to know where you came up with crocheted cacti.
There was that's a good question. I don't know if you ever remember the game Final Fantasy, any of the Final Fantasies. There was a character named Mulligan, I believe. He was a cactus that would run out, and his attack move was basically shedding the needles on him. And a friend of mine found a crocheted mulligan cactus thing online and was like, I'm going to send this to you because you like that character so much. And it just happened to pop in my head because I know that is an esoteric search. Like you're going to go down a rabbit hole looking for that. And I know to get out of the rabbit hole, recall could help that person. Because like I said, you start off, anything you're searching for that happens to be a little bit off the beaten path, could send you down a path. And if you want to ever get back to it, unless you're, favoriting every page that you go through, or maybe, you're a master at navigating your history, or, saved location, stuff like that. I'm saying for the grandmother who was like, you know what, I had Chrome open, I clicked on one thing, it sent me to another site, and I don't know where that tab is, and maybe I can hit the back button and it might take me back, or it might take me somewhere else. Having that screenshot to be like, you know what, there it is right there, and I can click on it and purchase it right now through recall. I think is going to be useful, and that's what I'm saying. I think they're adding filters, tag, like you can tag stuff manually so that you can create a profile of certain things that recall will then start adding those thumbnails into, knowing that it's associated with these type of things. I think there's a lot there that could be awesome for it if done correctly. Again, I'm not saying Microsoft is going to do it correctly. I don't think any of these companies are going to do it correctly, at least not now. This is baby steps. But I don't think, we necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just think they did a good job of, halting it. And now that they're slowly testing it, I think, their competitors have shown them like, hey, here are things that you may not have thought of that you can start adding to it before you even give it to the general public. Maybe the general public doesn't get it till next build, unfortunately. But we get to start testing and giving them their feedback. They can watch people buy the new Pixels and the new iPhones and the way that they use it and say, all right, we're going to pull from that. We're going to pull from this. We're going to remove what we did there. We're going to remove there. Here you go. Here's your desktop version of that thing that you guys love doing on your mobile devices. That's all I'm going with that on that one. We belabored that point a lot. Let's get on to our next topic, which is Google trying to be easier to use on Windows.
I don't get this one. I'm going to have to call this what it is. I don't get it.
It's Google Essentials. It's basically they are coalescing all of their web apps, I'm assuming, and
when I read this, and I don't mean to cut you off there. When I read this, I thought, okay, maybe finally they're actually coming up with apps that will run. And then we have reviewed a few Chromebooks here on the website and talked about some here on the channel. And I still have one of those Chromebooks, and I opened one of those Chromebooks and I said, when you look down at the taskbar, what do you see? You see the Gmail app, you see the Chrome app, you see the Google Photos app, you see the Messengers app. Sounds a lot like Google Essentials here, doesn't it? And when you click that icon, it loads up the website of whatever you click. So if you click Google Photos, it loads Google Photos from the web. It opens your browser. So I don't want to put Google down here too bad, but Google said that this app called Google Essentials is coming, and this made it a little more confusing, is coming to specific PCs. For example, they're starting with HP consumer level PCs. They clearly made the statement not coming to business PCs, that these apps will be in a place, Google Essentials, where you can remove them or add them back and have full control at your leisure. Okay, I have two questions. One, why not just release Google Essentials to everybody, no matter what it is? Why do we have to be PC specific on this? And two, are you giving us real apps now? Or are Windows apps for these things? Or are these just shortcuts that I can put on my desktop and don't have to have Google Essentials? Because, of course, I control the shortcuts that's on my desktop. So I'm not real sure what Google is after here. I did put it
Hold on. I just got this in from Google.
Okay.
To answer your first question, this is all about the money. Always follow the money. Google made some deal. And again, interesting enough, I don't know when this deal started because Google's being scrutinized for making its deals, but I'm assuming Google made a deal with HP to have this pre-installed on the start menu or the taskbar. Sorry, and what these will do are download web app versions of the specific apps that people unlock. So basically, it's an icon on your desktop that will lead to all of the Google Essentials stuff, and they will come in as web apps. And if you've ever used Edge Edge basically on a PC, it will allow you to download web apps and have them have limited functionality as a regular app. So you can get notifications.
Right.
They will appear in the start menu. They'll appear in the taskbar menu. You can install and uninstall them the same way you would do a regular app. So that's what this will be. But they made a deal with HP, and they haven't done a full deal with everyone else yet in order to have these on there. Now, again, they don't necessarily need them on a Chromebook. I'm sure Apple was like, hey, we already have our suite of apps or whatever. If you want to go get Microsoft Office or whatever this Google Essential is, you can go to the App Store and get that. That's how we're going to distribute it. But HP said, all right, go ahead, toss it on our taskbar or whatever. And whenever we sell these out, it will have the start menu, it'll have the Microsoft Store, and it will have your Google Essential right there because we know people use that. As to your second question about what were you asking about, whether or not they're real apps?
Yeah, because you get from a Chromebook and, you click the icon down there that they want you to think is an app, but really and truly, it's just a shortcut. It's a shortcut.
I think we're still going to be in that same situation.
So I think this is still going to be shortcuts too. It would be nice. I will throw Google a bone here. It would be nice if we had real Windows apps for Google Photos, Gmail, Messages, Google Photos. Are you hearing me, Google?
Nope.
Are we?
Well, maybe this is the impetus for building in, or at least latching on to the File Explorer the same way Google Drive does, because Microsoft has its own Photos app, and it has a gallery in there. So maybe when you launch this Photos web app version, it can link into File Explorer so that you can at least view your images in the Windows File Explorer UI. So you're not necessarily having to leave and go to the separate Photos web app. But again, you will lose out on some of the functionality that you get from the Photos web app as far as like search is concerned and things like that. So, there'll have to be a fine line between what they will and will not allow. Again, I'm all for it. I think this is great because, again, it is hard to coalesce these docs, drive, calendar, stuff like that, unless you're in Chrome, which will then give you the little, circle icon, kind of like you do for Office, which has the bundle of apps in there. If you're strictly using Firefox, using Edge, you're using Opera, stuff like that, these apps are essentially all over the place. You have to go to each separate URL in order to access this. This is now just, a coalesced way to get to them. Let's move on to our next topic, which will be Google facing renewed U.S. legal challenge over its Chrome data privacy policies. We had mentioned, I think it was last week before last, about Google getting a slap on the wrist, at least a no-no for being antitrust and violating those, I believe the Sherman Act was it or whatnot. Now, a class action lawsuit against Google has been reinstated by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. The lawsuit, initially filed in 2020, accuses Google of collecting personal data from Chrome users without explicit consent, particularly those who do not sync their browser with Google accounts. Very bad. The appeals court found that the lower court did not adequately investigate under consent, leading to the reinstatement of the case. So Google had a reprieve for a second. They were like, you know what, we're going to kind of toss this. And so for the last 3 years or so, it's kind of just gone under the radar. Someone said, you know what, let's look back into that now that we're kind of scrutinizing Google over search. What else are they, kind of having malpractice in? The lawsuit alleges that Google collected various types of personal data, such as browsing history and IP addresses without permission. This follows a previous settlement where Google agreed to delete billions of data records related to tracking users in incognito mode. You guys remember that from a couple of years ago. Google has expressed disagreement with the appeals court, obviously, decision, and mentioned in an upcoming update to Chrome. The case has been remanded to U.S. District Court Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers for further evaluation. I don't know if she was the original one for the tracking incognito mode thing. She might be. This lawsuit adds to Google's ongoing regulatory issues, including a recent ruling that found that the company is guilty of monopoly practices, as we mentioned, potentially leading to significant consequences. They're still waiting for, how they're going to kind of fine them or what kind of penalties they'll have. But so now we have Google being bad using Chrome. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm tired. And you
sound like the Google lawyer.
I'm tired because it seems like I don't know what company or which case started all this stuff. Where the EU's probing, and everybody's looking at everybody for privacy. And I know AI in general kind of kicks some of this off. Because companies were questioning, well, what's being done with my data? How's my data being scraped? What's being done with it? Who's buying it? Who's selling it? So I'm going to try not to sound like a befumbling idiot here. I don't understand why these companies can't do decent business practices in general, because this is not going to stop until the way these companies do business, the way they handle information changes. Google wants every piece of your information to shove it into Google Ads. That used to be all we had to worry about. And now everybody wants every piece of your information to shove it into a language model, to train a language model in some way. So now we've got all this stuff out there. If you're going to use people's data, make it explicit. Tell them. Make them okay it. That way, when somebody wants to ask you, what are you doing with people's data? Hey, we've got all these records here of all these people that okayed it. We're not doing it to the people that didn't okay it. End of story. Because, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll tell you this right now. As my dad always said, and I had mentioned to you earlier, follow the money. That is the utmost thing we got going here. And I think when you use the phrase use your data, people tend to brush that claim off, saying like, all right, go ahead and use my data. If they were to say, I'm going to sell your data, people are then going to say, give me a piece. And that's right. That's where you start to fix that. You can say, hey, you know what? Because that's what Google's doing. They not only take the money or take your data to then push ads against to tell people, here's a profile that you can use in order to sell your ads to. They also just sell the data, because people will buy, the brokers buy this stuff, and they buy it in bulk, and they buy it for crazy amounts of money. So Google's double, triple dipping, and they're not the only ones. Microsoft does it as well. Apple, I don't think they may or may not do it to a certain extent, but Firefox, everyone who gathers data does it. They traffic it in money. It isn't because they're being benevolent and saying like, oh, we just want to know who you are as a person, and so that we can tailor things toward you. It's no, this is being transactioned. So if the idea is that we're going to tell, we're going to be transparent, and we're going to let the world know that we are trafficking in information, you then have to say, here's your piece of the pie. For every 1 millionth time that your data crosses the stream of trafficked information, you get a check for $5 from Google. Then people will be like, you know what? I'm getting passive income because I'm actively using your stuff, and you're making money off of it. I'm now making money off of it. Go ahead, take more of it. And if you're going to give it to a company, where's my $5 check at the end of the month? If not, then you don't make money off of it, because I'm not making money off of it. So the language has to go from use your data to sell your data. And that's when people will really start. I think you and I, the average person, will start waking up and going, oh, wait a minute, sell it. Where am I getting a piece of this? How is this benefiting me? And if you say, oh, because you're getting a free service, no, that doesn't work anymore. If you want to pay for your service, give me my check and I'll return it to you. If you want to pay for Google search, guess what? I can pay for it for that $5 check you send me every month. But at least give me the option to do that, because you're now selling my stuff.
2 words. 4 words here. I agree. That's my first 2. I agree with what you said. My second two words, gift certificate. Because some of these companies are going to say, we don't want to have to deal with the taxation and the tax laws and all of that good stuff of sending out millions and millions and millions of $5 checks, $2 checks, $50 checks, $20 checks, gift certificates. People love
Yeah.
gift certificates. People have to eat. People like to buy things. People money, in Google's case, they have the Google store. They have they might even buy stuff with you, and you make money back on what you sold that data for. So, good point there. I think if these companies would wake up to that and would be happy with that, number one, that these lawsuits of data privacy would stop for the most part. And I think it also makes consumers aware. And I think that's part of the problem. Consumers have this false sense of security that are not people like you and I. They think they can get on these devices and do whatever they want to do. And it's secure. Nobody's going to see it. There's not a digital footprint. Well, guess what? There is. And I think this would wake people up when a company could say, this is the data we have on you. Well, how did you get that data? Would be the consumer question. And then consumers would not, well, I really don't want you knowing that. So consumers would then curtail themselves to be more aware, more safe, and it would help our infrastructure as a whole. Because I think people would have to, they would be more alert to what they're sharing, what they're doing, what they want these companies to know, what they want the divorce lawyers to know when their significant other finds out about their, So, I think what you said there, that's a good way to look at it.
It's one way. And talking about money and prices, we're going to our last topic, which is Twitch raising its prices. So we're going to need those checks pretty soon, Google.
Yep, we're gonna need those checks, Google. I need mine now, if you don't mind, because I am a streamer, but I am a recreational streamer, so I do not have a day in the life of a streamer video. But if you are
it's never too late to start.
If you are a Twitch content creator, unfortunately, it's going to cost your supporters. Starting in October, it is going to cost your supporters an extra $2 to subscribe to your feed on iOS and Android. Now, ironically, this is just mobile subscriptions only. I had to double read that to make sure I understand. The tier ones are going from $5.99 to $7.99, so there's where your extra $2 is. And other tiers, tier 2 and tier 3, in my opinion, by the time you're at tier 2 and you're at tier 3, you're considering quitting your day job. I have no idea what tier 2 and tier 3 cost. Those tiers are staying the same. So let's be clear that we're only affecting tier 1. So it is August the 23rd at the time of recording this. You got just a little over a month to support your favorite creator at $2 less at $5.99. I will say this. Let's not let this extra $2 impact whether we support our favorite creator or not, because you need to understand Twitch is in trouble. Twitch, I read something yesterday, has not turned a dime of profit since Amazon took them over. Twitch is trying to figure out a way to survive. Now, does this do it? I don't know. I don't know how much they need to survive. I don't know what their numbers look like. But let's not let this $2 lead to a boycott of Twitch or, hey, I'm going to go stream over here. Remember that most Twitch creators are just like myself and my friend Kareem here. We're just sitting in a room, doing what we enjoy, creating content, hoping you watch it. It costs us money to buy the gear, the cameras, the stream decks, the lights, and setting up rooms in our houses or our office to be able to do this. So I get it. Everybody's going up. Inflation. Twitch is now going up. I don't want to see the rush to boycott Twitch. I saw one earlier this year with when Kick came out, which was another Twitch-like streaming platform, because Kick was paying a little differently, so everybody said goodbye to Twitch. Remember, in order to be content creators, we need multiple platforms to showcase our content. So let's kind of be supportive of this, please.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Normally, I don't say these kind of things, especially for Netflix and Disney, who keep raising the prices every other month. But to your point of Twitch being another avenue for people to offer content. Yes, there's TikTok and things like that, but this is more long format, and this isn't always just while it's mainly gaming. I found cooking shows on here. There's therapy people do as well. Like these people, there are different avenues, different things you can find on Twitch that you may or may not find on YouTube. And even then, you still have to pay for certain aspects of YouTube. So if you want to have as many areas to kind of compartmentalize your online experiences, then let's see if we can try and keep Twitch around, keep it remaining. With that being said, we're going to end this podcast. Where can people find you if they want to talk to you more about your new Twitch channel that you're going to start putting up?
Yep, I do have a Twitch channel, so you guys are welcome to check that out. It is just like my socials on Twitter and Threads, David PAJ. So my Twitch channel would be, for those that want to know, twitch.tv/David PAJ. I'm actually sitting in the room where the streaming setup is. I have been spending the last month or so kind of rebuilding, retweaking the streaming setup. So maybe you'll see some Microsoft Unboxed streaming here coming soon. We do get to thankfully try out some of these gaming devices, and I've got some of them hooked up over here in the streaming setup. So we're going to see how this plays out. Jump in there. I'm not asking you to spend $7.99 to support me. Just jump in there, have a good time. David PAJ, find me anywhere.
I'll take those $7.99 checks, though. You can find me at Minehead1 on Twitter. You can find me at Kareem Anderson on Threads. I love being over there talking about comics and all things non-political and non-world threatening. It's my safe space. But you can also find me on Instagram at Kareem Anderson. I will be heading to IFA, fortunately, in a week or so. But I think David and I have been talking off mic. We want to be online a little bit more, so we're going to try and deliver some more video content to you guys on different platforms. We have a TikTok, Microsoft Unboxed and TikTok. You can go see some shorts on there. We're going to start trying to give you some more timely news updates via video, because that is the way of the world these days. So bear with us as we start to try and make this transition. We will still be on our website if you want to get more full-length descriptions and information and data and content, stuff about like earnings reports or Microsoft's most recent reorg where they're trying to shuffle the money and hide it from you. You can go to our website and read that, but we will start making an effort to be on more social platforms. Until then, enjoy your weekend, and we will see you guys next week with more information, more news, more fun.
See you guys next week, folks. Thanks for listening, watching.